Hi, and welcome to this Impetus interview. We seem to live in a world full of paradoxes, and one of them is the way we live our lives with our digital technology. We are told to reduce, reuse, recycle, and reduce our impact on the environment and the world we live in. But we're also told almost every day that we need to buy new technologies and we need to replace old ones just to keep up with the latest trends of the technologies. So today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Ugo Valeri, the co-director of the Restart project, to talk a little bit more about the work that they do to help us change this. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great to be there.
So I'd like to just start off with, could I get a little bit of information about your background and how the Restart project came to be, I suppose?
Sure. Well, I've always had a passion for technology, but also a passion for technology that works and that is repairable and modular. So, while living in Kenya many years ago, I experienced the thriving repair culture and economy over there. And when I moved back to Europe, um, I was very dissatisfied with our tendency to just throw away and recycle things as soon as they stop working, which has been increasingly booming. So, with a friend with similar concerns, also having been exposed to much more exciting repair and reuse cultures and globally, we decided to try and do something about this. And that's how the Restart project was started, by creating a first set of community repair events where people learn together that we can resist the throwaway economy and bring back an ethos of repairing and reusing and taking things apart to learn how things work and why is it that they stop working in the first place. And the rest is history. We've been active for 11 years and we've been helping community emerge and become bigger and bigger, connecting with groups and networks all over the world that do similar work, that support initiatives of community groups to bring repair back in shape and in fashion, while trying to change the legislation that currently is limiting the repairability of products. And so fighting back the push for manufacturers to just help us keep buying, and recycling, but not repair and reuse.
I suppose it's sort of a sign of the capitalist kind of culture that we've sort of found ourselves in, where these big companies are driving us to try and buy new equipment while also, I don't know, paired with perhaps a loss of skills a little bit. Like people are now a bit worried about taking apart these quite, well, quote unquote, technical things that we might have spent quite a lot of money on in the first place. And I don't know, with voided warranties if you fiddle with things and kind of making it feels like, yeah, part of the culture has like the zeitgeist has been pushing against for a long time us really embracing fixing and meddling with these things that we do own, I suppose.
Absolutely. It's been a long trend of products increasingly being made in the Far East at very low costs, linked to the poor practices of employing people and exploiting them, and products being made in a way that it's easy to assemble and not so easy to disassemble for repair and reuse. So repairs become more expensive, more costly, more complicated, while ordering a brand new product online and getting it delivered within a few hours has become easier and easier. So we've lost actually a sense of proportion, and not particularly because we've also not been fully understanding the environmental implications of this throwaway economy, which, however, are becoming increasingly obvious the moment you start connecting the fact that many of these products are, or all of them really, are include a lot of critical raw materials within them, not to mention the batteries, and for all of the products that do have a battery, which is a lot of them these days, And when you start opening your eyes to the fact that the materials inside these products come from mining, often in terrible conditions, affecting communities, particularly in the global south, that are not having a say about whether mining should be allowed in their territories. And at the same time, we're trying to move away from fossil fuels, and therefore we need some of these very materials to perform an energy transition that is as urgent as it's ever been. So, yes, capitalism is at the heart of the problem, and we need to change completely the set of incentives so that the overproduction of brand new products is slowed down, and we reflect on bringing back a set of skills and of practices that help people make the most of the things they already have, that support an economy based on repairability and reusability, refurbishing rather than recycling products as much as possible, and recycling things when there simply is no way to use them anymore. I mean, it's clearly important to recoup all of the materials in these products, but it's a lot more efficient to add more years of life to a product before it gets recycled.
I suppose it's all about reducing the costs of getting all the raw materials, all the rare earth metals from to create the products, reducing the kind of waste from when something quite simply breaks, but no one knows how to fix it, it getting chucked away and just sort of simply going onto Amazon or something similar just to one click buy a new one. And also giving, I don't know, the consumers more choice, I suppose.
It's about choice, and it's about transparency and real information about what's happening, because many people might still ignore the fact that the vast majority of the environmental and climate impact of the products we use occurs before we've even switched them on the first time. So it's all in the manufacturing and the mining of resources that happens before. And while we obsess about the energy efficiency of a product within its use phase, so while we talk about, oh, white goods A, like washing machine A, is more energy efficient than the one you already have, we don't think as much about all the materials that it includes. And so how ensuring that there is an optimum durability of the existing products is more important than moving to the next generation that might be more energy efficient in the future. So there's that aspect that's quite crucial.
So it's similar to, I just remember reading somewhere that people moving to electric cars rather than keeping their old ones. Whereas, yes, in theory, the electric car is more energy efficient or better for the environment, but not from you already own your car. If you're going to scrap your car and get a new one, then that's kind of beyond the point, I suppose.
Yeah, the best analogy when it comes to electric vehicles is understanding that in the electric vehicles, the main thing is indeed the battery. And so when you look at the fact that, for example, a car for 94% more or less of its lifetime is still parked, is not moving.
Hmm.
Sure, we should move to electric vehicles, but we should make sure that we reduce the number of vehicles that need to be manufactured so that we make the most of the batteries that are made, and we don't use an incredible amount of raw materials to produce all of these individual devices. When you look at consumer products, obviously people tend to have their own, fair enough. You know, you have your own laptop, your own tablet, your own smartphone, whatever it is. But let's make sure that we make the most of these resources by having them last for as long as possible. And we can do this. It's possible. We used to do this, and we have very, very limited selective memory of a past that where things used to last a lot longer, and people would think twice before replacing a repairable product. Obviously, it's become incredibly costly and challenging to find spare parts, to find the repair manuals, to um, disassemble a product that was not designed with repairability in mind for the reasons we discussed earlier. And as a result, often consumers don't find it particularly convenient to get their products repaired or to try themselves. And that's exactly why we are pushing, we're at the heart of a movement for a universal right to repair. We are one of the founding organizations of a European right to repair campaign, which is challenging European institutions to make repair accessible, universally accessible, and affordable again, because everyone wants products to be more repairable. Polling that we've done in the UK, but that other organizations have done across Europe and the EU itself through its Eurobarometer, shows that 8 out of 10, 80% of people want manufacturers to be required to make products more repairable. But until there are stringent legislation that requires them to do the right thing, they won't just do it as an act of goodwill.
That's really interesting that you say, because it feels like of within a single generation, we've seen so much kind of increase in the accessibility of technology, I suppose. A generation ago, computers were, well, perhaps slightly longer than one generation ago, but these big, massive towers that you couldn't really move from room to room. But now everyone has a smartphone in your pocket and all the computational power that that comes with. But also, we can't really live without them a little bit. We've kind of co-evolved with this technology to, yeah, uh, as an integral part of our lives, I suppose. And yeah, it's interesting that you say that you've been working with your legislation for the right to repair, and it does seem that there has been a shift to. I've definitely seen more adverts and more kind of companies that are willing and able to refurbish old phones and resell them on to others. And yeah, it does seem like the culture is slightly changing a little bit.
It's definitely changing in the sense that there's an acknowledgement that repair and reuse are important. But I think we are still seeing a lot of kind of greenwashing from some companies to kind of show that they're there and doing it. Well, they might still be in parallel continuing to come up with brand new models all of the time, changing connectors, making parts not compatible between one generation of a product and the next. So while obviously it's positive that they're no longer ignoring the importance of repair, and in some cases they're jumping on the bandwagon of a right to repair movement, they're trying. I think for organizations like us and for the thousands and thousands of volunteers that support the movement that we are involved in, it's important to keep our eyes wide open and not forget that a lot of the practices of these very companies are exactly the problem. Take laptops, for example. It's become accepted that in many cases, laptops are no longer upgradable. So laptops used to be easily upgradable. You need a new battery, you just pop up the one you have and you replace it easily. You do it yourself. It takes 5 seconds. That's a thing of the past. You need more memory, more RAM. You would just add an extra module very easily in about 2 minutes. You needed a new hard drive, or storage device, you could do that super easily. Well, now in many cases, memory and storage are soldered onto the main board, which means if it fails, the machine is over. And if you need more storage, you're stuck. You need to buy a new one.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these decisions have been very deliberate moves by industry to make products more well, less flexible, and to require people to upgrade and buy brand new things all the time. And so we need to really shift this and acknowledge that we can't leave it to companies to dictate the terms of the relationship we have with electronics.
That's, I don't know, interesting but sad at the same time, just to think, yeah, that these companies are, of course, they're money-making industries and they want to try and get as much out of us as possible. But do you think they will shift? There seems to have been, at least in the EU kind of political sphere, that there's been, obviously with the work you've done with the right to repair legislation, but also recently, I think it was this week or last week, the universal power adapters for phones, which has just come through. So yeah, it does seem like we're perhaps making baby steps. But maybe could you talk a little bit about the work that Restart did and working with communities for, I don't know, your work that you were doing with the right to repair, I suppose.
Yeah, so we from the beginning, we've been collecting data that shows what are the things that people are trying to fix at community repair events, at the Restart parties, repair cafes from all over the world, primarily Europe. And the reason for collecting this data was to show the environmental impact of this work, which often takes care of repairs that no commercial repairers still performs, or that in many places isn't available anymore. But increasingly, we realized that this was a form of collaborative citizen science, really, to gather more and more evidence about the barriers experienced by people in repairing products. So, what are the type of categories of products that people struggle more to repair, and why? What are the main barriers, whether it's the cost of spare parts, the availability of spare parts, the difficulty in gathering repair manuals for these products that are not provided for free as they should be by those that manufacture the products, or simply the design that doesn't allow you to take something apart without risking to break it further. So this data, for which we created together with partner organizations, open standard, the Open Repair Data Standard, has become a thriving data set. We now have over 130,000 repair attempts. And whenever there is a European consultation on potential legislation to make repair the norm again, we are able to pull data from real efforts of real people all over Europe and beyond that shows that what the problems are, and also gives interesting insights into how people are trying voluntarily to extend the life of products for much longer than manufacturers claim people are interested in keeping them in life. So, for example, some work we did on computers, some laptops, showed that over 40% of the laptops we're seeing at community repair events are older than 5.5 years, which means, and with many being over 10 years old, which is quite interesting because it shows that it's not true that it's enough for manufacturers to support them for maybe 5 or 6 years. We need a lot more and a lot better, because people are showing that things can last and should last and are expected to last longer. So this data has been an essential part of the move to power the reasons why we need a universal right to repair. And we've been using it many occasions to counter the narrative by manufacturers, even in European policy negotiations or in technical meetings where potential alternative policy options are discussed. For example, looking at the recently approved smartphone and tablet regulation that will become effective as of 2025, requiring all new models from June 2025 to be more repairable, including having longer software support and easier to replace battery in many cases, among other things. And there were circumstances where manufacturers were claiming that certain spare parts, for example, the connectors, the power connectors, wouldn't be required as spare parts because they're not frequently needed. And we had data showing that 6% of these repairs done at community initiatives across Europe actually required that part. So you can start telling a different story compared to what the normal narrative is. But more generally, it's data that also backs up like the strong will and initiative of a movement of people that is growing quite massively across Europe. And there's thousands and thousands of these groups everywhere that really demand a change and are showing the world that is possible every weekend in many, many towns and cities all over.
I suppose it's a way of flipping the script a little bit because previously, if you didn't have this information, you'd only know how many people were buying laptops, I suppose, rather than the people that are wanting to actually repair them. And a big part, as you were mentioning, like a big part of your project is running these community events where you run trainings or guidance on how to approach repairing equipment. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the success of these outreach programs, I suppose.
Well, the success of these programs is largely showing in the fact that they're massively replicated. So we do run some ourselves, but what matters the most is that there is a very wide community across the whole of Europe and increasingly globally that runs similar activities, whether directly following our model or following models completely independently, but in tune with what we're doing. So we, as the Restart Project, run an online platform called restarters.net that already has over 600 or more groups that use this platform to promote their own activities and to share and learn from each other what's happening at these events. And if we look at the data that we've been progressively aggregating and releasing openly, we see massive growth, particularly once the main restrictions related to COVID were released progressively. Like there's been really an acceleration of these activities and of the data that they generate, which, by the way, only represents a small portion of the activities because being voluntarily collected, many initiatives do exactly the same thing, but don't necessarily have the means or the desire to collect and share data. But this shows trends. So it's very successful. And we, as an organization, are based in London. And over the last 2 years, we've seen a phenomenal growth of the range of groups involved just in the greater London area. I mean, we now have somewhere between 30 and 40 groups that are active. So every weekend in multiple neighborhoods, you see activities going on almost every single hour, which shows the appetite both from people who want to volunteer, which let's never forget, they are the true heroes of all of this, but also the people who want to organize, that support, from creating the conditions for making it happen to those that actually go and queue at times to repair their things. And what's magical and essential to our model is that people go and learn from the experience. It's not like a repair shop where you drop your thing, you leave and come back and pick it up. No, it's better in a number of ways. First of all, that you take it apart together with the volunteer repairer assigned to you. you learn something about each other as well as something about the product itself, why it's so hard to be taken apart. And then you also learn at times when you can't repair it, you still learn why on the spot. And that can help you make more informed judgment about what to buy next in case you need to replace a product, for example.
No, it must be such a rewarding kind of experience for those people volunteering and the people bringing their things, just sort of taking apart their, I don't know, this quote, well, literal and almost kind of not literal black box in front of them that they didn't know how it worked or why it was broken, and then to take it apart to kind of to learn about these connections that does this to the battery that connects to your screen, and yeah, either well, ideally repair it, but also just to learn why and how it perhaps broke in the first place, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And we also see a lot of excitement and of interest in young people. We, I was recently at an event in Turin where the local Restarters group ran a series of teardowns for kids to learn what's inside a computer, like and getting to understand all the different aspects of what does each component do and why it's there, etc. And you see kids, well, my very own son, extremely excited to take apart his this laptop and learn a lot about it. And you know, this really brings a lot of excitement and can shape the way people see their own relationship with electronics and how we're not necessarily meant to be seeing these impenetrable black boxes, but we can create a more curious, collaborative culture of understanding how things work and having more care about keeping them in life for longer.
I suppose it all comes down to a little bit of just having the bravery to start, I suppose, and to even kind of to learn these skills. I, I've only touched upon electronics, so I'm not going to lie and say that I know how I'm doing it, but I can do a bit of soldering and that sort of thing. I don't know
That's a great start.
how easy are these skills to like to replace a screen or a battery? Is it relatively simple if you get past that kind of first tipping point of I'm actually going to open my laptop and perhaps do something even worse to it?
Yeah, so the main thing that we encourage is for people to do what they feel comfortable doing, and that's why we think it's extremely important to do these things together. It's one thing if you're watching an online video telling you, "Oh, just do this and that," but doing it with someone else who's done it before the first time can really make a huge difference in terms of your future level of confidence because you don't know until you've done it, being supported, how much pressure is okay to apply to a connector. I made a mistake more than one occasion myself to break a connector cable when trying to replace, luckily, my own screen in a device. But it can be hard depending on the design of the product, but at times it's surprisingly simple as well. But having someone who makes you feel okay doing also making a mistake and learning together, smiling about it, it makes the whole difference. So I encourage everyone to visit a local community repair initiative, and that's the best way to learn. And then maybe you get interested and you want to join as a volunteer and shadow one of the existing volunteers and learn and become one of them. And maybe otherwise you'll just see, okay, well, that's not for me. And I'll just learn that I should always try to go to an independent repairer first before deciding that a product is ready for to be recycled.
So the Restart project was the first winner of the Digital Community Awards at the 2023 EU Prize for Citizen Science. I just wanted to ask you what impact being recognized at such a level had on the project, and yeah, how yeah, what that experience was like.
Well, first of all, it was something extremely rewarding that all these efforts that for many years people felt were going against a huge tide, a huge wave of consumerism and throwaway economy. It didn't matter that we were doing this little repair activities here and there. It was actually finally proof that there is official recognition, and it came at a time where already the data was being used to make the case for more repairable products as part of future legislation. So this was sort of an extra sign of approval that really made us incredibly proud, and it also shows that it's possible to change things by aggregating the efforts of many thousand people doing the right thing over and over again. It also makes the data set more visible, and we've been seeing an increase in the range of organizations that are interested in the data and in downloading it to see whether the data means something to them. We've have from European technical researchers and policymakers to even manufacturers, retailers, independent repairers, as well as academics and students, and regulators, a wide range of people that are increasingly attracted to this independent open source data set, which is really rewarding. And we hope that this work will continue to extend and expand, allowing more groups across the whole world, not necessarily just in Europe, to collect and share their data and their challenges, and hopefully be able to change the system faster than we have been able to so far.
I suppose you answered this slightly in this just previously, but yeah, with that and with the kind of coordination that you're having with other organizations across Europe and beyond, what does come next for the Restart project?
So we know that the fight for a universal right to repair is not something that you win overnight, and the speed at which legislation is changing around the world might seem quick to some people, but we see, as you said earlier, baby steps really. And the problem of electronics and of technology in general is that the slow pace of regulation allows for new tricks being developed before a set of regulations become enforced. So currently, we are seeing potential risks related to the use of software by manufacturers to prevent repair from taking place, or for forcing users to use original spare parts that are sold at extremely high prices by manufacturers. So there's and then many of the regulations that have been approved so far only revolve very few product categories, while our data set shows the amazing range of products that people are very keen to try to repair. So there's a lot of work ahead in continuing this push for policies that really give us the consumer rights to repair all the products that we have, and also design requirements for future products to be more repairable. So there's plenty of work going on there. For us, however, it's also about creating the demand for repair, as well as pushing for upstream, creating the requirements for products to be more repairable. So we've been testing with more visible repair activities. We've been running in partnership a couple of fixing factories in London, and we see this emerging movement of actual community run repair shops that show the potential for doing this at a bigger scale. And so we think that we need to bring back repair in all the high streets, in all our cities, and get a flourishing set of opportunities for people to develop new skills and see them into employability, creating new green jobs around that, and making repair really the norm. So, in a way, countering the push for recycling more and trying to recycle better while reusing and repairing much more. So there's plenty of work ahead.
Well, it all sounds very exciting, and I wish you all the best for changing our culture to a more reuse sort of standard. I That's my last question, I suppose. So I just wanted to ask you if there was anything that you wanted to add, if we'd missed anything.
No, I think I will probably only close by suggesting that if anyone is interested in the data set, particularly, you can find it at openrepair.org. And if you're interested in the push for right to repair, in Europe, we have repair.eu as the website of the European campaign for the right to repair. And for anything the Restart Project related, it's the restartproject.org or on social media. So join the movement, visit a community repair event, and ask your politicians to make the change we need.
And after that call to action, I just want to say thank you very much for spending the time to talk with me today.
Thank you. That was a pleasure. Thanks
Okay.
so much.
Bye for now.